From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another month as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Twin Cities sports scene. And Wally, once again, another episode of 10K Takes TV is on the air. And we have a lot to get into. Ooh. Suddenly, the Minnesota Timberwolves are in the rearview mirror. We will deal with that later. The Minnesota Wild are on the playoff clock. There was a draft, rumor has it, in the NFL, and boy, your Twins are scorching hot.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know where to start. I suppose we start with the Wild. I'd love to start with the Twins because they are playing some pretty good baseball, but we'll get to that in a few minutes as well. But yeah, the Minnesota Wild on the playoff clock. No sooner did the Timberwolves lose Friday night, I got a text from you. It says, the Wild are on the clock. So we moved from one playoff team to the other. Whether this playoff team has a better chance than that playoff team, I'm not so sure. I mean, you're playing against a St. Louis Blues team right now that beat you 12 of the last 14 times, including that win, the frozen win at Target Field in the Winter Classic. So, the Wild have had a great season. No question about that. Their best regular season record ever. And here we go into the postseason, unfortunately, against the team that has their number right now. And then if they win this series, you're probably going to see Colorado, the best team in the West. And you can make the argument they're the best team in the National Hockey League.
Well, and the Blues clearly have been kryptonite for the Wild. They were 3-0 against Minnesota this season, and it goes back a few years. But I looked at the results of those games, and a lot of them, 1-goal wins for St. Louis. Now, they all count. There's no moral victories in the NHL, but the Wild have been very close. So can they flip the script? We will see. Interesting, too. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves played a team down the Mississippi in Memphis, Wild playing a team down the Mississippi in St. Louis. So maybe the Wild will have better luck than the Timberwolves. But most experts who follow hockey think it's going to be a very competitive series. These teams are evenly matched. I want to see what happens in the nets, which is usually what the dictator is for success or failure in hockey, right, in the playoffs. So you have Marc-Andre Fleury, you have Cam Talbot for Minnesota. For St. Louis, it's Ville Husso and Jordan Binnington. Binnington was the guy when they won the Cup a few seasons ago, but Husso has actually outplayed him, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think that defensively, we're going to see if the Wild come to play in the postseason because they've been known for putting points on the board, that's for sure. But are they going to be able to stop St. Louis? And that remains to be seen. And as you said, goaltending is going to be the key.
Well, and both the Blues and Wild finished with 15 wins in their last 20 games. In that span, to your point about firepower, St. Louis scored an NHL high 90 goals. They went 12 straight games with 4 goals or more. So, yeah, I think this is going to be firepower on ice. The Wild can put the puck in the net. We've seen it with Kirill, Kevin Fiala, Ryan Hartman. They've got a lot of people who can score, and St. Louis is loaded, led by Vladimir Tarasenko.
Yeah, but this is the Stanley Cup playoffs, and things change.
Yeah.
It is not that offensive game that you see sometimes in the regular season. Much like the NBA, it's not that offensive game you see during the regular season. Heck, the Timberwolves were the highest or one of the highest scoring teams in the NBA this year, and you saw what happened in the playoffs. It changes, and I think you're going to see the same thing in the NHL playoffs with the Wild. You can score all those goals in a wide-open type game in the regular season, but in the postseason, man, goals are at a premium. So.
Yeah, for sure. Minnesota, franchise record, 113 points. So this is the best regular season in Wild history. St. Louis with 109. The Wild able to garner home ice in the final days of the regular season. How big of a deal in your eyes is getting home ice? I think it means something because Minnesota's been dominant at the X this season, one of the better home teams in all of the NHL.
No question. They are, as you said, one of the best teams at home all season long. I think it'll continue in the postseason, but, they're still going to, I guess if you win them all at home, you're fine if you have home ice in this first round. But it's against a St. Louis team that has played well against them. And St. Louis, if you remember, they played, I guess you can use the word heavy in the postseason a couple of years ago. Very defensive-minded club. As you just said, they're a little different this year. They have some offense to go with it, particularly here down the stretch. So we shall see.
They have 4 lines, the Blues do. They can, get production from all of their lines. So it should be fun. These teams are rivals. They know each other. And if you want to go way back in time, the Minnesota North Stars and St. Louis Blues had a rivalry. So this really goes back to 1967. So I expect a physical series. As you said, playoff hockey, it might not be as wide open. I think it could get chippy at times. The Wild know they need to go on a playoff run. They are long overdue to get the fan base revved up, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and, they found out a little bit last year what the playoffs are like for guys like Kaprizov. I think that the learning curve has changed. I think that he is well indoctrinated now and knows what the postseason looks like. He knows that he is going to get bumped around more than he does during the regular season. He knows he's going to be shadowed. Can he put points on the board? We shall see.
Yeah, they are going to try to eclipse Kirill. That would be the Blues. They're going to do whatever they can to take him out of the equation, which I'm not sure you can do. But if you focus too much on him, somebody like Kevin Fiala or Ryan Hartman or Jordan Greenway or whoever can step up and deliver for Minnesota.
Can Kevin Fiala do well in what might be his final season as a member of the Minnesota Wild? Because, he's put up some good numbers this year, but at the same time, those numbers are going to equate to a big contract for him next year. And the Wild have cap issues that they're going to deal with. Let's not forget that. Though that Parisi Suter deal, that's going to haunt them in the coming years. And it gets worse. Rather than better. This year they had a little more cap space. Next year it gets worse, gets progressively worse here for the next couple of years.
They're going to need creative caponomics, Bill Guerin, because Matt Dumba also is due to get paid. And those are two cornerstones of this team, Fiala and Dumba. But, Wild fans, calm down. Don't worry about that now. Focus on the Blues and trying to get out of round one and, keep this roll going.
All right.
So, hockey. We're going to talk more about that coming up with Jessi Pierce from NHL.com. We will get into the Minnesota Twins who go down to Tampa and win 2 out of 3. And, of course, the T-Wolves and the Vikings. This is 10K Takes, your Wild ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
"10,000 Takes," the TV show, Wally and Eric, and we are going to continue our Minnesota Wild talk. Why not? They are in the postseason, a 7-game series potentially, and we are joined now by Jessi Pierce from NHL.com. All right, I guess that'll be the first question right out of the box. How many games do you think this one's going to go?
I think it'll go 6. I mean, it's definitely going to go a distance. Game 7 would not surprise me at all, but I'm putting my eggs in the Game 6 conclusion.
Okay.
All right, Jessi, as we all know, in the NHL playoffs, if you don't have a stud goalie or two, you can't advance. Who's got the better tandem? Ville Husso and Jordan Binnington in St. Louis, or the future Hall of Famer Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot, the current All-Star here in Minnesota?
I'm going to go Minnesota, and the reason I say that is because Husso's kind of taken that starting role from Binnington. I mean, they're both two very good goaltenders. It is a good tandem. However, you've seen how difficult the decision is to pick a goaltender here in Minnesota. Who should start, who will start. It could go either way. So, I mean, that means you have a very strong tandem. And the good news is Marc-Andre Fleury, who gets the start in Game 1. I don't think Minnesota's afraid to pull him if he struggles out the gate. And, Cam Talbot could always come back in during the series if they need him. They can turn to him whenever they need to. So I put Minnesota's tandem above St. Louis's just ever so slightly.
12 of the last 14 meetings between these two clubs has resulted in a St. Louis victory. How much does that not only just figure into the equation here, but how much does that weigh on the minds of the Minnesota Wild?
I mean, it can't, right? Postseason is a completely new year. The slate is clean. If you go look, it's 0-0. And every game is 0-0, frankly. So you cannot look at the past. And granted, you look at 2 of those games of the 3 this year against St. Louis, they went into overtime. So they were very close, tightly contested matchups anyway, which bodes well for Minnesota. But it's playoffs are a different beast. It's a different animal, different game in general. Minnesota's success hindered largely on their offense this season, but you're not going to see 6 goals, 7 goals, 4 goals. You're going to see 2 goals, a lot of 1-goal games in playoffs. So I think it's going to be a completely different matchup than what you maybe became accustomed to earlier on against St. Louis, and that bodes especially well for Minnesota, who is definitely looking to turn the tide, if you will, and get some victories against the Blues.
2 Russian rockets on the ice in this series, Jessi. Vladimir Tarasenko has done it for years in St. Louis. Kirill Kaprizov has burst onto the scene in the Twin Cities. Which guy do you think will have more impact?
I mean, they both will, without question. Tarasenko's coming off of some bad injuries. He's had kind of a tough go, but he's still Tarasenko, and he showed that down the stretch. Kirill Kaprizov, in just year 2 of his NHL career, has shattered every single franchise record that Minnesota had ever set in its history. So, I mean, his impact is obviously tremendous, right? I mean, if you were to give a heart to each specific player on their team, I think Tarasenko notably could get it for St. Louis, and Kaprizov for Minnesota, because they are the MVPs of their squad. But I think, as we've seen with Minnesota, there's the depth component, but also Kirill Kaprizov is counted on to get those big goals, to make those big plays when it really matters. And that's when you really see Kaprizov shine. So I think Kirill's impact is a little bit larger than Tarasenko's, just for that purpose, because I do think the team looks to Kirill. They look to their superstar, as they should. He's getting paid the superstar bucks. He's getting the superstar money, but I think his impact is going to absolutely be necessary for Minnesota's success.
All right, let's make the assumption that the St. Louis Blues pay extra attention to Kirill Kaprizov and, quote-unquote, take him out of the mix. To me, that means that somebody, most notably maybe Kevin Fiala, steps up. How important is Fiala's presence going to be in this postseason, particularly in this series?
Oh, huge. And, you can go back to, in the bubble, Fiala struggled during the playoffs. And last year, Minnesota as a whole kind of had some ups and downs during the playoffs. So I think Fiala's kind of gotten over that hump and that maturity level, as we saw on his recent heater. I mean, he's going out there and giving it his all. And it's not necessarily just in the scoring and the assist column, but he is just present in the right place all over the ice, on the forecheck, and just the way that he moves. It's tremendous to see. His work ethic has improved tremendously. But just in general, that line is going to be very critical, because, as you mentioned, there's no question that St. Louis knows to shut down the Kirill, Zucchi, and Hartman line. So you're going to look to Boldy, Frederick Gaudreau, and Kevin Fiala, and then even the Joel Eriksson, Jordan Greenway, Marcus Foligno line. That line has been especially important in 5-on-5 and in shutting down some of the opposition's top lines. So, depth is huge. Minnesota's had depth all year. You'll even see the 4th line step up when it comes to it. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Fiala, he's next in line behind Kirill Kaprizov as needing to make a big impact offensively for this team.
If you had to point out a weakness for the Minnesota Wild, it seems to me it might be special teams, particularly the power play, something that has been inconsistent for them this year. Where do you think they are on the power play right now, and do you agree with that assessment?
100%. That is the biggest kind of hole that Minnesota needs to figure out, and I don't know that they necessarily have figured it out yet. There were glimpses of promise toward the end of the regular season, but then in the final 2 games, it yielded very little again. And the problem with that is St. Louis's penalty kill is particularly strong. So it's going to come down to good 5-on-5 hockey. It's going to also come down to Minnesota staying out of the penalty box on the flip side, and not giving St. Louis any of those power play opportunities, because the Blues special teams are rolling and they're hot. So we'll see. You had mentioned, they've been inconsistent, and inconsistent is exactly the way. So sure, they might do well one game, but not the other. So the best you can is just play your game, continue to play your game. And if you find yourself on the power play, get puck on net. That's really what it comes down to. Get the shots through, and get down there, which again is going to be tough against a very tight defensive St. Louis team.
Jessi, what's the expectation level for Minnesota? The Wild have now been around for 22 years. They're no longer newbies in the NHL. They've never gotten to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I realize you got to take it one series at a time. But what should we realistically expect?
It's tough, right? Because your expectations vary with this team every time, and that's Minnesota sports. You put your expectations up here, a lot of times they're not met. But I think realistically, Minnesota could get out of this series. I had mentioned I see it in 6. I see it swaying Minnesota's way and getting out of this in 6. It'll be a tight matchup. It's going to be hard. It won't be easy. But I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota gets through to the second round. I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota truly does make a little run here. They have kind of everything working toward them. They solved the goaltending issue that was earlier on. They got more physical with the additions of Nick Delorier and Jacob Middleton. And they're healthy right now too, which is huge. Marcus Foligno's back, Matt Zuccarello, Matt Dumba, Jared Spurgeon. You've got those names. And then you have Kirill Kaprizov. And I mean, you have all these pieces. And right now that window is there for Minnesota. I think that's why you saw Bill Guerin make the moves that he did, because you recognize how tight that cap space gets next year. And it's going to be very hard to replicate whatever gets done this year. So, realistically, I think Minnesota has it in them to do it. Again, they're a Minnesota team though. So the inside of me is like, don't get too excited, but we'll see. I mean, this team is special. It feels different from any of the teams that I've covered in the past, and I'm excited to see what they can do with the opportunity.
All right. Well, stop reminding me that they're a Minnesota team. We will see you at the rink.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. She is Jessi Pierce, beat writer for the Minnesota Wild for NHL.com. Stay with us. More to come here on 10,000 Takes after this timeout.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10K Takes rolls along, Wally and Eric. And I don't know how much baseball you were able to watch over the weekend, but your Minnesota Twins are playing some pretty good ball right now. They moved up in the MLB power rankings, up to number 14, according to MLB.com. But, that doesn't mean anything. What's most important is they are on top of the AL Central right now, 3 games ahead of my Cleveland, formerly known as the Indians.
Wow, so the G-men are the second place team. Well, you're right, and they've won 9 of 10.
Yeah.
And they are really on a roll, and they exploded yesterday down there at Tropicana Field in Tampa. Winning 2 of 3 on the road against the Rays, to me, that's a good thing, because
Yes.
Tampa Bay is always, if not in the playoffs, in the hunt to be in the playoffs.
And when they lost on Friday, you sent me a text or you said something to me. It said, well, now they're playing real teams. This is what happens. But they bounced back both Saturday and
Chris
Sunday.
Archer, I saw some of that game, and then I saw some highlights from yesterday. But Chris Archer, the former Ray, was outstanding on Saturday. And then yesterday, the bats were booming inside, that dome in St. Petersburg.
Yep.
And, boy, this Josh Winder first start, you couldn't ask for more.
Right.
So they've had good pitching most of the year. And that's what we all thought would be the potential question mark. Their team ERA is among the best in MLB. Then the bats would come around. We knew that would eventually happen. It did yesterday. Byron Buxton, wow, he hit one from St. Petersburg to Tampa.
Yeah.
I mean, if that thing didn't have a roof on it, it would have landed in the bay. I am just hoping upon hope that the guy can stay on the field, because if he does, I think he is the most exciting player in MLB.
I'd like to see him bat 30, hit another solo home run on Sunday. I think of his 7 home runs, I think at least 4 of them now are solo shots. Bat him third. You want to bet your best hitter third?
They've won 9 of 10, and there he goes. He's tweaking things.
Tweaking. I want guys on base when this guy is hitting. I mean, you only lead off once. I understand that. But when he comes up, you got the bottom of the order that's up before him, and generally speaking, they may or may not be on base. But one guy that has been getting on base, Carlos Correa, has come around. He has really been stinging the baseball. Multi-hit games all weekend long.
And did you see the quote a few days ago?
Oh, I know.
I freaking love it here. That's Carlos about Minnesota.
He's negotiating, man. Don't kid yourself.
Well, you're right. He wants that 10-year mega deal.
He ain't getting
now,
it
look,
here.
I'd love to see him stay, but I would never give anybody a 10-year deal. If you haven't learned from Joe Mauer or what the Angels did with Albert Pujols or Josh Hamilton, some of these other long-term deals. 5, I'm okay with that, and then you can revisit it after 5, but not 10. But I do hope he sticks around because I think he's starting to realize this team has a lot of potential. They're going to play the Houston Astros here in a few days. He'll see his old teammates, but good to know that he at least likes it here.
Yeah, no, he seems to like it, and he's playing really well. He's hitting the baseball now, too. Earlier, we just got defense, but that bat has started to come around. That's a dangerous 1-2 punch. And if Polanco starts hitting like we know he can, he put up some pretty big numbers last year. Those 3 guys at the top of your order, boy, that's pretty good. I'd like to see Polanco lead off when arises. And oh, by the way, your guy Miguel Sano goes on the injured list because he twisted and turned when he got caught in that rundown, or could have got caught in that rundown when he mistakenly ran everybody off base and they ended up beating the Tigers despite his bad base.
The walk-off on the throw-in error by Eric Haas.
You can't make this stuff up, man.
And that's 2022 baseball in microcosm. That puts a guy on the DL. 30 years ago, he'd have been forced to go back into the lineup. But look, Miguel hasn't contributed at all yet. But if he ever does, that's another good sign for Minnesota. And you mentioned that 3-game lead over Cleveland. Look, the Chicago White Sox are banged up now. They already swept the White Sox last week. You want to get as far ahead of Chicago as you possibly can because they eventually, in my opinion, will figure it out and get on some sort of a hot streak. They're too good. But hey, kudos to the Twins.
Yep, they are on top. All right. The weekend went through, and we both survived. I don't know how many Minnesota Timberwolves fans survived after that debacle again Friday night. I mean, geez, 3 times. Not only do they hold the NBA record for 2 double-digit blown leads in the fourth quarter of a playoff series, they did it a 3rd time on Friday. I didn't think it was possible for them. They set the record by doing it twice in the first 5 games. They did it again in Game 6. It's like I'm scratching my head watching this saying, you're not going to do this again, are you? And they did. They blew another lead.
Well, if you're going to set a record, shatter it.
Oh, they shattered it, all right.
This just in, Wally. The Timberwolves autopsy has been completed, and the NBA coroner says the cause of death is choking on too many double-digit leads. That is why they are dead and gone, and their toe is tagged, and they're out of the playoffs. So how do we view this past season? In some ways, very successful. They re-energized the fan base. I know you and I were excited. It was a lot of fun to be in Target Center for those playoff games. They have some young stars in Cat and Ant. But also, you can look at it as a woulda, coulda, shoulda. They didn't pounce on those opportunities. Blowing 3 double-digit leads, they could have won that series. They could still be playing right now against Golden State. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think Timberwolves Nation should be like saying, wow, we could have done better.
Yeah, and not only that, everybody's who's on the positive side of things, and I don't necessarily completely disagree, say, well, they're young, they're still learning, all this. You don't know where you're going to be at this time next year. There are no guarantees that you're going to be back in the postseason. There are no guarantees that you're going to be 2-2 in a series against a team that's seated above you. I don't necessarily buy into that they're going to be better next year.
You have to pounce on your chances.
Exactly my point.
Is now live in the moment, because when they made the playoffs a few years ago with Jimmy Butler,
we thought that they were going to build on that.
Right. And then it imploded, and Jimmy Butler basically talked his way out of Minnesota. Another example I use is the Atlanta Falcons in that Super Bowl against New England. When you talk about coughing up a huge lead, I mean, they were up like 28-3, and New England made this remarkable comeback, and it was an epic collapse by the Falcons. I'm sure the Falcons thought, well, we'll come back again, we'll get it right. They haven't been close. So you're exactly on point. You know what? You live now. And we don't know what's going to happen next season with the T-Wolves. Hopefully, they keep arcing up. The trajectory looks good, but you don't know.
Yeah, well, hopefully they find somebody else to run the point. I am not a D'Lo fan, and it sure played out in the postseason. All right, we need to take one final break. When we come back, we'll get more into more stuff with our takes of the day. You don't want to miss that. Right here on 10,000 Takes, your Timberwolves. Take it.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect. earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
"10K Takes" on television. Another episode. Wally and Eric with you. Final segment of today's show, and we've hit that fork in the road. Takes of the day. We're going to find out what your mood is. Maybe you're a happy camper. Doesn't happen often, but possibly.
Occasionally.
Or are you an angry American, cranky Yankee, grumpy Guardian? What is it today?
Well, based on some of the readings that I went through on the Vikings draft, I would say if I'm a Viking fan, most of them seemed unhappy with the Vikings draft. For me personally, I could care less. Let me know what happens, in September, how any of these draft picks are progressing through training camp and are they contributing. But I'm going to switch over and roll back to Timberwolves fans on Friday night. Please explain to me why in the world you're booing Tyus Jones. I don't get it. When he came into the game, he got booed. When he would touch the ball, he got booed. Really? This guy is nothing but class. Played for the Timberwolves for 4 years. They gave up on him. He didn't give up on them. He ended up getting a free agent contract with Memphis. He has now proven himself to be one of the better backup point guards in the NBA, might be the best backup point guard in the NBA. He's a free agent again this summer. Really stupid. Booing Tyus Jones. He is a class individual. He is a class act. And it's not even because he's from here. It's because who he is as a person. And oh yeah, by the way, he is from here. He's from Apple Valley. He's a great guy. I like what Tyus Jones has done in the NBA. I hate what Timberwolves fans did booing him on Friday night. Grow a brain. Gosh.
All right, well, the mood meter says cranky Yankee.
Yes.
And speaking of Yankees, one of their all-time greats, Reggie Jackson, once said, "To boo me is to know me."
Okay.
So maybe Tyus Jones should look at it that way. But you're right, and that's a Minnesota thing. I remember when Joel Prisbilla and Chris Humphreys used to come back to Target Center. They would be booed roundly whenever they touched the basketball. Chuck Knobloch.
Well, Chuck Knobloch said stupid things, though.
It's just a Minnesota thing. There's an Eeyore complex up here.
Well, there should be because our teams always lose.
Exactly. All right. Well, I got a couple of mini takes to squeeze in before we leave you. I'm going to salute Clayton Kershaw, who's one of my favorite players in Major League Baseball. On Saturday, he got strikeout number 2697. That's number one all-time on the LA Dodgers list. That's more than Don Sutton, Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, Fernando Valenzuela. Good job, Clayton, number 22. Unfortunately, at least for me, the Dodgers lost to Detroit, of all teams. Finally, the other take is Saturday down in St. Louis, it was Nolan Arenado bobblehead day for the Cardinals.
Okay.
Problem is, Arenado wasn't playing. He was serving a 2-game suspension for his part in a base brawl last week that the Cardinals were involved in. So you give out his bobblehead, but you couldn't watch him play.
Well, and watching him play is a treat these days. He is one of the most exciting players in Major League Baseball right now, and he is smacking the ball around. Him and Jose Ramirez, the two best third basemen in all of baseball. And it's not just the Colorado air for Nolan Arenado.
Yeah.
I mean, while he was in Colorado, you could have said that. You say, well, look, Michael Kadire won a batting championship there, Justin Morneau. I mean, guys have thrived in Colorado, Larry Walker for years. But this guy has proven it in St. Louis, too. So, yeah, he's a great player.
I know the Rocky fan base was very unhappy when Arenado left to go to St. Louis.
No question.
All right, well, we're out of time. Let's FedEx out those thank yous. One goes to the great crew here at the TV studio, also to Rocky and Jessi Pierce. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.